This week in the Torah we read Parshat Tazria Metzora, and we are in a section in the Torah that deals with ritual impurity, with all the things that a person or an object or a house can contract, something that is considered to be ritually impure. And this week in Parshiot Tazria Metzora, we read about this disease called tzarat, mistranslated as leprosy. Tzarat is really a disease of the skin, when the skin turns white and scales and peels off. And this was considered to be a disease in those days, in biblical times, that was that would give a person or make a person ritually impure. And the Kohen, the priest, was to come to that person who had developed this disease on their skin, and was to examine the skin and examine the coloration or decoloration of the hair in the skin, and try to evaluate if this disease had penetrated deep inside, below the surface. And if that was the case, then the person would be considered to be contaminated. This was considered to be something that was contagious, that would spread very quickly, and they would spread not only from person to person, but from person to textiles, to garments, to leather, to the walls of the house. And so it was considered something that was pretty dangerous, not only medically, but particularly in terms of the concept of ritual purity, which then made a person not able to perform certain rituals that would render the person unable to enter into the temple. Anybody who had this ritual impurity could not be in the presence of the holy. To prevent the spread of this disease and of any ritual impurity in the community, the individual who had contracted tzarat was removed from the community, isolated for a period of time, and then would undergo a process of purification. When the disease would heal, person would then re-enter the community. Now the rabbis later on believe that the spiritual manifestation, this disease called tzarat, was a physical manifestation of a spiritual disease. And many speak, as many of you have heard, of the disease of lashon hara, of gossip. The rabbis agree that the isolation and purification of the person were driven by a compulsion to protect the community from contracting this disease. Now, there is, in our days, a contagious disease that is running deep below the surface, that is taking root in our people, that is spreading and contaminating our people in Israel and here. This disease exists in a significant sector of Israeli society. It has penetrated deeply into the government of Israel and into segments of our own community here. It is a racist, supremacist, and violent ideology called Kahanism, for Meir Kahana. It was once marginal, and it has been marginalized back in the 80s by the Israeli Knesset. But it is no longer marginalized, and it is no longer marginal. This past week, as we marked Israel Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron, and Israel Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut, there were violent mobs, even as the woods around Yerushalayim were burning. There were mobs here in New York City, in Crown Heights, and in Israel, in the city of Ra'anana. One of our dear friends who will be here next week, who's a fellow, rabbinic fellow at BJ, Rabbi Chen Ben Or Tzfoni, is Rabbi at Kehilat Bet Samueli in Ra'anana. The congregation gathered on the eve of Yom HaZikaron to view the screening of the joint Israeli-Palestinian memorial ceremony, which we also screened here in this sanctuary on Tuesday. a beautiful, beautiful, moving ceremony where Palestinians and Jews, Israelis, Palestinians, Arabs come to mourn together the loss of their loved ones as a result of the conflict. People were killed in all sorts of different ways as a result of the conflict come across the divide to mourn together and to honor each other's losses and each other's victims. And it's a very powerful and beautiful ceremony that has been going on for 20 years. It had been going on in the open, but last year there were mobs attacking the people who had attended this ceremony, and so this year it was in a secret location. This location was maintained secret until the last minute, and it was indoors. In Rabbi Chen's congregation in Ra'anana, they were screening this ceremony when a mob directed by one of the officials in Ra'anana of the Likud party, the majority party in the Israeli government, incited the mob to go, and there was violence, and there was screaming, and there was insults, and there was hurling of stones, and people got hurt. And it was scary. We know from Chen, and she wrote a beautiful letter after this terrible event. Last night, we gathered to remember, to open our hearts to grief and bereavement, not only our own, but that of all whose lives are interwoven with the life of this land. We never imagined that an act of solidarity would turn into a night of fear, that the windows of our synagogue would shake under violent assault, not from strangers, but from fellow Jews, that our congregants trapped inside would need protection from large police forces fearing for their lives. The scenes from last night echo dark chapters in our history, when Jews were attacked in their houses of prayer. But this time, the horror was compounded. The attackers were Jews themselves. For far too long now, our days have been shadowed by darkness. Last night deepened that darkness, and this morning, Memorial Day for Israel's fallen soldiers and victims of terror, our hearts are heavy with grief. It is natural after such a night to feel anger or even hatred, but we must resist. We must not let hatred claim our hearts. If we give in to darkness, our Judaism, built on compassion, will be defeated. It's a beautiful, just an excerpt of the beautiful letter that Chen wrote the following day. And so, in Crown Heights too, there was a mob attacking people who came to protest the presence of Minister Ben-Gvir. And a woman was chased after by mobs of people who were insulting her and were trying to grab her. It was I'm sure, a harrowing experience. Last week we had here our dear friend Rabbi Chaim Seidler-Feller, who shared a text by Rabbi Soloveitchik, the luminary of the modern Orthodox movement, who wrote in 1958, 10 years after the establishment of the state, "The Jew has experienced persecution and brutality. We never had a state. We never had political power. What if we had been a state in the Middle Ages? How would we have acted? Just like the feudal lords? Or we would have acted differently because of our Jewish values? Who knows? Now with the state of Israel, the test has come. We are facing the test. Will we behave like any other state ethically? The whole of Jewish history will be interpreted in terms of what the state of Israel will do in the next 50 years. This is, he wrote in 1958. If the state of Israel doesn't live up to Jewish ethics, people will reinterpret Jewish history in a whole different light. The question is not whether Israel will defeat the Arabs on the field of battle, but whether we'll defeat the evil within our own community and be victorious in this field. To me, he said, this is the most important problem." End of quote. Many today, in the wake of what we experienced and saw this week, will prefer to remain silent. But some are waking up. if we don't defeat this evil, it will consume us. This is an issue of pikuach nefesh, because this will cost eventually human lives. And it is an issue of pikuach neshama. It's an issue of saving the soul of the Jewish people. If that's what the Jewish people is and has become and will represent, we are doomed. This is an issue of pikuach neshama, the saving of the Jewish soul and the Jewish spirit. Shabbat is a time of restoration of the soul. It is a time of recentering. It's a time of reconnecting with who we are, with our values, with our deepest Torah. I pray that there will be a time of deep reflection, of deep soul searching here in Israel, in all Jewish communities around the world, so that we can stop this plague, this tzarat, this plague from continuing to spread among our people.